Collapse File Number 28. Subject: Stanford International Bank of St. John's, Antigua. Chairman: Sir Alan Stanford. Texas gym owner, cricket impresario, Knight of the Realm. Product: certificates of deposit. Certificates sold, $7 billion. Value behind them, a hole. Cause of death: the regulator paid to watch him had sworn a blood oath to protect him. This is the Collapse Files. June 2008. A black helicopter settles onto the grass at Lord's, the home of English cricket, and out steps a Texan in a blazer, posing beside a Perspex box he says holds $20 million in cash. English cricket applauds. The notes in the box, reporters would later learn, were mostly fake. So, it turned out, was everything else. Begin the file in Waco, Texas, 1982. Alan Stanford's first business, a chain of bodybuilding gyms, collapses underneath him. Remember that. The founding fact of this empire is a bankruptcy. He resurfaces offshore. 1985, Guardian International Bank on the tiny island of Montserrat until British regulators crack down on Montserrat's banking industry and Stanford relocates somewhere more accommodating. Antigua. The bank gets a new name, his own. The product is beautifully boring. A certificate of deposit, the instrument a retiree buys and forgets. Stanford's certificates paid roughly double what American banks offered, year in, year out. No bad years, no explanations. They sold to school teachers in Texas, oil workers and retirees in Venezuela, Mexico, Miami. By the bank's own count, some 30,000 clients across more than 100 countries. $7 billion handed over for a promise and a certificate. A sales army moved the product. Stanford's brokerage paid its advisors outsized commissions for steering clients into the certificates, a detail regulators would later underline. When the incentive is that loud, questions get quiet. The certificates were issued here, marble floors, mahogany, a portrait of the founder. The brochures said the money sat in safe, liquid investments, watched by teams of analysts. Keep that sentence, it is the crime. And understand what Stanford was to Antigua, the island's biggest private employer, banker to its government, owner of its newspaper, its airline, its cricket ground. A one-man economy wrapped around a nation of 90,000 people. November 1st, 2006. At an independence investiture, with a member of the British royal family in attendance, Antigua and Barbuda makes him a Knight Commander of the Order of the Nation. The gym owner from Waco is now Sir Alan. He claimed descent from Leland Stanford, founder of Stanford University. The university publicly disowned any connection. It didn't matter. Print the legend, sell the certificate. Return to Lord's, the helicopter, the box, because this is the legend at its peak. A deal for 2020 cricket, England against a Caribbean all-star team at $20 million a game. Winner takes all. Losers fly home with nothing. November 2008, Antigua. The Stanford superstars demolish England in an evening, and 11 Caribbean cricketers become millionaires before midnight. Cameras catch Sir Alan in the stands, bouncing an England player's wife on his knee. English cricket winces, the check clears. Now stop the film, freeze it there, the floodlights, the millions, the night in the stands, and ask the question nobody at Lord's had asked. Where exactly does the money come from? Because here is the first finding of this file. The retiree's $7 billion was not sitting in safe, liquid investments. There were no teams of analysts. The portfolio in the brochure did not exist. Where did it go? 2 private islands, yachts, jets, the newspaper, the airline, the cricket ground. And recorded in books investors never saw more than $1.6 billion in undisclosed personal loans to Stanford himself. Even the cricket purse, the $20 million in the Perspex box, was depositor's money. He wasn't spending his fortune on the spectacle. The spectacle was the fortune performing for its next deposit. Inside the bank, the real books were kept by the chief financial officer, James Davis, Stanford's old college roommate. By Davis's later confession, the returns in the annual report were invented. The numbers decided first, justified afterwards. 2 years running, the bank reported identical returns to the 100th of a percentage point. A machine like this needs one more part: the regulator. Antigua's Financial Services Regulatory Commission, the agency that existed to inspect Stanford's bank, was run by a man named Leroy King. And according to Davis's sworn confession, in 2003, King and Stanford sealed their arrangement with a blood oath. The price of the oath, by King's own eventual admission, more than $500,000 in cash, Super Bowl tickets, private jet flights. In exchange, Antigua's regulators certified the bank as sound and delivered something better. When Washington sent inquiries about Stanford, King forwarded them to Stanford and let Stanford's side help draft the replies. The watchdog wasn't asleep. The watchdog was on the payroll, wagging. Which brings the file to Washington, to the American regulator, and to the single most damning document in this case. Exhibit A, Report of Investigation Number 526, by the SEC's own Inspector General, published in 2010 after the collapse. Its subject: what the SEC knew about Allen Stanford and when. The answer begins in 1997. 1997, SEC examiners in Fort Worth review Stanford's operation and conclude it is likely a Ponzi scheme. They refer it up. Nothing happens. 1998, they examine again. Same conclusion. Nothing. 2002, again, nothing. 2004, again, nothing. 4 examinations over 8 years by the government's own inspectors, each reaching the same conclusion. The Inspector General's report explains why enforcement passed. The case looked difficult, novel, slow, not, in the report's words, the type of case the division favored. The office preferred quick wins. Stanford was not quick. 12 years passed between the first Ponzi conclusion and the end. In those 12 years, Stanford collected the knighthood, the islands, and most of the $7 billion. Who audited the bank all that time? Not one of the global firms. A one-man practice in Antigua, an accountant most investors never met. He died in January 2009, weeks before the end. Nobody ever put him under oath. Then the weather changed. December 2008, Bernard Madoff is arrested in New York, and Impossibly Steady returns, stops being a sales pitch, and becomes a symptom. Every too-good number on earth suddenly has investigators squinting at it. In February 2009, a Venezuelan analyst named Alex Dalmadi publishes a short paper on Stanford International Bank. He titles it DuckTales. If it looks like a duck and swims like a duck, the paper spreads like fire among the bank's depositors. The certificates had one fatal feature: they could be cashed in. Redemption requests flood Antigua. A machine that breathes only new deposits begins, quietly, to suffocate. It is early 2009. The financial crisis has every investor on earth asking for their money back at once. A real bank sells assets to meet redemptions. Stanford's bank had nothing to sell but the story. February the 17th, 2009. Federal marshals walk into Stanford Financial's Houston headquarters. The SEC files civil fraud charges and freezes the empire. A receiver's notice is taped to the glass. Stanford, reportedly, tries to charter a private jet out of the country, and the charter company declines his credit card. 2 days later, FBI agents find him in Virginia and hand him the paperwork through a car window. He surrenders his passport. In June, the criminal indictment lands, and this time there is no bail. He has been in custody ever since, first in a Texas jail, where a beating by another inmate left him injured, medicated, and arguing about his own competency while the trial waited. March the 6th, 2012, a Houston jury convicts Allen Stanford on 13 of 14 counts. June the 14th, the sentence, 110 years. The accomplices, James Davis, the roommate who kept the real books, traded his testimony for 5 years. And Leroy King, the regulator with the blood oath, fought extradition for a decade until Antigua finally put him on a plane in 2019. He got 10. Antigua took back the knighthood. The Honors Committee voted while he sat in jail. The revocation order was served on the 1st of April, 2010. The insignia went back in the box. The word "Sir" came off the letterhead. And Antigua itself deserves a line in this file as a victim. The island lost its biggest employer, its airline, its bank, and spent a decade with its name welded to his. 90,000 people co-signed one man's legend and paid for it. The savers got the worst arithmetic. For years, the receivership paid out cents on the dollar. In 2023, 5 banks that had moved Stanford's money, led by Toronto Dominion, at $1.2 billion, agreed to pay more than $1.6 billion combined. In 2026, the receiver finally began the last round of payments. Sir Alan Stanford is now inmate number 35017-183 at the Coleman II Federal Penitentiary in Florida. His scheduled release date is March the 13th, 2103. He would be 152 years old. The Perspex box is gone from Lords. The certificates are wallpaper. The knighthood is revoked. What remains is the founding fact, unchanged since Waco. Underneath the helicopter, the box was always empty. File 28, closed.